Hey now everybody, Jamie here, and today I'm going to give you my top 10 favorite games that were designed in 2020. Now I know that it's March and we've had 3 months of 2021 so far, but last year I just didn't get that many games played. I tried my best, but it was tough to get game nights in during the pandemic. But I've worked really hard to get all the games in that I wanted to get in so that I could make this list. So here it is, my favorite games from 2020. Let's do it. Disney, The Haunted Mansion, Call of the Spirits. Now this first one on the list is a game that is an example of why I don't consider this list the best games that were designed in 2020, like the greatest designs, but more the ones that I got the most joy out of in 2020. This one is Disney's The Haunted Mansion, Call of the Spirits. Now this one was from Prospero Hall, which is a design team, not a single designer. And one of their biggest strengths is how well they integrate theme into their intellectual property board games. Now this one of course is based on the Haunted Mansion ride from Disneyland and Disney World. Now I'm a huge Disney fan and we've been on this ride a dozen times, so we kind of know it really well. My family loved it. We saw all the theme just coming right out of this game. This is a game where you're exploring around the mansion, which is circular, just like the ride. You're taking the car around the mansion to see all the different spirits. You're going down and you're socializing with these spirits. So you're set collecting different kinds of cards that are these different spirits. And they'll score differently at the end of the game, like the dancing ghosts. You need to get pairs of them because they're dancing, and tons of different kinds like that. The real thing that makes this game interesting is there are certain ghosts that are kind of mean and they will give you haunt cards. And at the end of the game, you will tally up the value of your haunt cards, and whoever has the highest can't win the game. So you're always trying to decide, like, can I take another haunt card? How many does everybody have? You know, trying to guess what their values are and hoping that by the end of the game, you don't have the most. You're trying to give them away. You're trying to get rid of them. You're being careful about taking them. And so there's a lot of strategy that goes into this game, even though it's a kind of light family style game. It's a game that I really think that hobby gamers would enjoy as well, even if you're not playing with kids or older people who aren't into our hobby. This one works for just about everybody, and if you're a Disney fan, it's got tons of theme in it. I just had a blast with it. My family loved it, and we're going to continue playing it because it's just a good time. DUNE Imperium. DUNE Imperium. Now this is one that everybody was fired up about last year. They couldn't wait for it to come out. When it finally came out, they couldn't stop talking about it. This one was hot. And I'm a DUNE fan, so I was fired up about it too. And finally played it and really enjoyed it. Now this is one that marries deck building and worker placement together. So it's a traditional Euro, but it has a deck building aspect to it that just adds that extra layer of depth. You're attempting to go around and influence the various factions of the DUNE universe so that they can give you their resources, so you can spend those resources to take certain actions on the board. And it's really tough to do that well. But really the standout of this game is the massive amount of player interaction it has with the battlefield in the middle of the board. You're fighting over Arrakis. You want to be in control of the flow of spice. So you're fighting every round in this battlefield. And boy, does that add such a level of tension and frustration and stress as you're trying to deal with it. And sometimes you just can't get it done. Sometimes you're in a perfect position to get it done. And boy, it is just from round to round really makes the game just flow really well. It's such a good game with such good mechanisms, great production, awesome intellectual property. If you're a DUNE fan, no brainer. If you're a Eurogame fan, you're probably gonna like this one too, because it's really well done. Nevada City. Now this one I didn't hear a ton of people talking about this year, and I wish they did because I just loved it. I love Old West, I love Eurogames, and I love city building, and it's got all of those in there. Plus, it adds tons and tons of theme to this game. Now, it's kind of complex because there's a lot of rules to it, but most of those rules and that complexity lends itself to the theme. Like there's things added to make it feel more rich and realistic. Now, what you're trying to do here is build the city of Nevada City. You got a long stretch in the middle of the board and you're putting buildings down that other players can use as action spaces. You're also trying to manage your ranch with your cattle and your mines and your farmland, which are growing crops. And the cool mechanism in here, the one that I really like about it, is that all of your workers are your family members. You got dad, you got mom, and you got your kids, your son and daughter. And those are your actions, and they have their various strengths and the places that they can go that they can get the most benefit. But if you need extra help, you can go get seasonal workers and they can come in with their own abilities. And if you really like those seasonal workers, you can marry them to your sons and daughters and keep them forever. What a neat thematic element to this game. There's just a real good story that plays out during this game. The economy of resources and which resources are valuable each turn is a really cool mechanism. A lot of people talk about there's a little too much randomness in the game, but I think if you play the game a number of times, you start to, that randomness kind of starts to go away because there's event cards in it that could be very punishing for you. If you know those event cards are in the deck, because really they're always the same. There's only like one, I think, that gets discarded at the beginning of the game. The rest are always in the game. You know, you get to know that they're there, and part of the game is figuring out how to handle them each turn and being prepared for those events to happen. So really, this one is an excellent city building Euro with an Old West theme. I love it. Nevada City. Dwellings of Eldervale. Dwellings of Eldervale, another one that people were fired up about in 2020. Everybody was talking about this game, and it took me a while to play it. When I finally did, I was kicking myself for not playing it earlier, because boy, is it fun. Again, it's another Euro game, but this one has a great level of conflict in the game. It sort of has this thematic fantasy theme going on, and they really lean into that. You're sending your workers out to the various territories on the board with the intent of building dwellings there. And each one of those spaces has action spaces on it, so it's kind of a worker placement game. But other players can go in your space, take that action, and then duel you. So if you lose the duel, you get kicked off of the board, and the other player gets a ton of rewards for doing that. And that's sort of the strategy of the game. That's one of the strategies of the game, is you're trying to position yourself perfectly so you can build dwellings, and the other players are trying to pay attention to what you're doing and make sure that you don't get the optimal moves. So it can be a bit frustrating if you don't like a lot of conflict in your Euros. This one's got a lot of it, and it can be disheartening when an entire turn is wiped away because some fool came in and kicked you off the board with some good dice rolls. But really, if you go into the game knowing that that exists and that's part of this game, I think you're really going to enjoy it. I love it. I'll play it any day in the week. The fantasy theme's awesome. The artwork's great. The components are cool. I like it. I like this game a lot. Dwellings of Eldervale. Altar Quest. Now, doing a big 180 here, we got Altar Quest, which is a huge thematic adventuring romp. There's no Euro game here at all, but it does have some good modern design sensibilities here. It feels old school, but has good modern sensibilities in it as well. This one is going into a dungeon. You're going into each room. There's monsters in those rooms. There's a feature in those rooms, which is kind of a cool little extra miniature that you put on the board that does something to the room. So each room is a different puzzle that you have to figure out in cooperation with the other players. So there's a good level of this collaborative puzzle solving that you have to figure out the best way to manage your dice, to manage the icons on the magic dice so that you can activate various abilities and using the cards from your deck to make sure that you satisfy this room and move on to the next. Another thing that's so great about this game is the massive amount of replayability, because there's 1.5 billion decks in this game, and it's got this thing called the modular deck system, where each element of the game, there's a ton of decks for it, and you pick one of them, either randomly or whichever one you want. So that would be like the types of monsters you're going to fight, the villain you're going to fight, the scenario, the types of features in the room, the type of altar that's in the game, that's sort of the crux of the game, and of course the character you pick. So there's all these different decks, and you combo them together to make a unique experience. So there's just a plethora of stuff, and every game is just a little bit different. Man, this is, I have to tell you, I believe this is my favorite dungeon crawl game I've ever played. I love it, and it's just so much replayability, great production. I love it. Altar Quest. HALLERTAU. Uwe Rosenberg has been a huge influence on our gaming group since the very beginning. Agricola, Le Havre, Ora Labora, Feast for Odin, Glass Road, there's just on and on. His games just are so amazing. And HALLERTAU is no different. The older this guy gets, the better his game designs become. This one is just so good. Now, I will say it's a little abstract in comparison to some of the others. Maybe Agricola had a better theme, Caverna had a better theme. But the puzzle of this game, the efficiency puzzle that you're trying to figure out, is just so well done. The replayability comes in with mastering a strategy, and there are a ton of different strategies to master. So you're going to keep coming back to this game wanting to just get a few more points this time, a few more points this time. When you feel like you got a great grasp on it, you can move on to a different strategy and do the same thing. There's just so much happening here. And it's an Uwe Rosenberg game, and he loves the whole growing crops concept and managing resources concept. And he does it again here, and he just innovates on that concept. He's got the crop rotation happening, which he never did before. So each field that you have gets more potent if you don't sow anything into it. So you get more resources from it when you do, and they go down, and then the other ones go up, and it's sort of this managing the crop rotation. He has this whole great concept of the community center and managing how many workers you have. It's kind of like the size and technology level of your society that you're building here. Hallertau, wow, I just love it. I just love it. I want to go back to it. I just want to get better constantly. And that is the hallmark of a great game. Clinic Deluxe Edition. Clinic Deluxe Edition. Now, this one's a little bit of a cheat because Clinic was out before 2020, but this is the new revised edition with absolutely stunning artwork from Ian O'Toole. Some of the best graphic design you'll ever see from Ian O'Toole. And this one is about managing a hospital. And I got to tell you, I've said it a couple times on the podcast, but managing a hospital seems like the perfect Eurogame theme because there's so many elements to it that lend itself to gaminess, right? You have to build the hospital and put all the right laboratories and rooms in it. Then you have to staff it with doctors and nurses and technicians that'll all make everything work perfectly. And you have all the different patients coming in with different ailments that you have to manage them, and you get paid different amounts based on their ailments and how intense they are. And of course, this is the funny part, you have to manage the parking for all of these people as well. And that sounds silly, like why would that be fun? But somehow it integrates into the game so well that you're managing parking spaces for all of these people. It's so good. It's so complicated, but Ian O'Toole's graphic design make it so easy to flow right through that game, just seeing every phase and everything you need to do. I love it, man. This is the best hospital game I've ever played. I dig all the aspects to this game, even the sort of tongue-in-cheek funny aspects of there is a strategy of letting patients get worse so that they pay you more. You might be a dastardly doctor, but you're still running a business, I guess, in this weird fantasy world. It's just a good game. It is so good. Clinic Deluxe Edition, and that Deluxe Edition specifically, is just so amazing. Go check this one out. I know if you're a Eurogame, you're going to dig it. Praga CAPUT REGNI. Praga CAPUT REGNI. Now, this is one I had to Google how to pronounce it when I first got it, but it is emblazoned in my mind now because boy, do I dig this game. This is a game that if people walk by your table and see this thing, they're going to stop and look and ask you what you're playing because it's beautiful. Artwork is gorgeous. It's all very colorful. You got the big city of Prague down across the bottom and the river running through it and this cool little bridge, constructible bridge that you go across that actually has a function in the game. You got this big wall being built and this cathedral being built, constructible, like 3D in the back of the board. And all of this stuff has a purpose. And the action mechanisms are so neat too. It has this wheel that you move the wheel around, and as the action tokens move around with it, they get more potent as it goes. And you take them out, you take the actions and move on. What I love about this game is the sheer number of strategies you can take. There's tons of them. There's building the city, there's building the wall, there's building the cathedral, there's building walls around your, whatever your thing is that you're building walls around. There's managing resources and mines, and there's just so many things going on in this game, and you need to do like 2, 3, or 4 of them throughout the game to actually be successful. So there's a different combination of strategies you can take every game so it feels fresh. Everything about it just seems to click. Like, it's one of those games that the designer built a machine and it is an efficient machine and it just clicks. It feels good to play and it feels intuitive to play. Praga CAPUT REGNI, man, this one is wonderful. It was almost my favorite of the year. But then when I thought about it, these next two, they went a little higher. But still, check it out. Praga CAPUT REGNI. Excellent game. Beyond the Sun. All right, so Beyond the Sun is one that I never expected would actually hit number 2. It wasn't until I was sitting down and looking at them all and thinking about my experiences with them and what I liked about them that it really just shined through as such a unique game. Now, this one is basically a civilization game where you're leaving Earth and you're going out to other planets and colonizing them. And you have to do this all via technology. So the majority of the game is actually building a technology tree collaboratively with the other players. Now, granted, it's a competitive game, but you're all building technologies that become the action spaces that you take. So you're building that technology, you're taking those actions, you're sending your rockets out with your people to build civilizations on these various planets. And it just does things in a way that is not typical for your normal Euro game or civilization game, actually. One of the cool things about it that I think is neat is it has all these dice. They look like dice. They're basically dice, but they're not dice you roll. This is how you manage your resources. You have spaceships and population and supplies on those dice. And as you convert them, you just kind of turn the dice to different ways. And sometimes you're placing them on the action spaces. Sometimes you're placing them on planets. Sometimes you're flying around with your spaceships with them. It's such a cool concept. Everything about this game feels weird. Like, as opposed to PRAGA, CAPUT, REGNI, which just kind of flowed and was perfect, this one just feels odd, but for something about that oddness makes it intriguing and makes it my brain work in a different way, if you know what I mean. I just love the way this game operates. It's not super pretty. It's a table hog, and as a matter of fact, the way it's all laid out is actually kind of annoying to deal with on the table. You got to get up and walk to the other side of the table sometimes to actually see certain things. That's some bad stuff about the game, but the gameplay makes up for all of that stuff. This is a game that intrigues me to the point where I want to continue to go back to it and learn how to play this game better. And the concept that it's all about the technologies as opposed to the constructing towns and buildings on these other planets. It's really about the technology that these different corporations are building. That's what makes it exciting. So weirdly, I didn't expect it would happen, but Beyond the Sun is my number 2 from 2020. Lost Ruins of ARNAK. All right, so my number 1 is the reason that DUNE IMPERIUM was not better on this list. They share something in common. They marry deck building and worker placement. And there's only one other area where they're similar. And it's the reason why I picked this one as my favorite of the year. Both of them have this concept. You're always trying to play cards and to try to find things on the board and try to get extra resources so that you can eke out one more turn. It's like this, you're trying to be, you're scouring the board. You're just looking everywhere. You're like, okay, I need this resource and I need it and it's somewhere. I know I can get it. Or if only I could do this thing, I could get another turn or two. And as you're like working it through and burning your brain out, finally you discover it and it's exciting when that happens. And though DUNE IMPERIUM does have that aspect, Lost Ruins of ARNAK has it in spades. Like, it's the whole game. It's trying to figure out how to combo all these different item cards and artifact cards and actions on the board to get as many actions as possible in a turn, all the while attempting to be very efficient and do the exact things that you want to do to win the game. Now, the theme is cool. It's like an Indiana Jones type theme. You're going out into the jungle, you're finding all these weird temples, and for some reason there's big monsters at those weird temples that you have to defeat. Even though there's monsters, there's not really conflict. It's just kind of like you spend a bunch of resources and they boot out, right? And you get some bonus for that. So I think DUNE IMPERIUM's theme is better, ultimately, implemented better at least. But this game makes me think in the way that excites me the most. The puzzle of it is just so amazing. Now, I did hear many times, and I have to agree, that if you ignore there's a big track on the side where it's you like writing your research and then publishing your research and kind of moving up this track. If you ignore that, you're going to be in trouble. So it's kind of a one-trick pony in that respect. And I bet there'll be an expansion that kind of monkeys with that a little bit in the future. But that aside, everything about this game is just exciting to me. It's so much fun to go through these processes and try to figure out this efficiency puzzle and get it done right. When you find that perfect combo of cards and actions and resources that you've been searching for 10 minutes, it's like your head explodes. You're like, oh, so happy. And then you get to do this cool thing, which might unlock 2 more actions that you can do at that point. Beautiful game. Beautiful design. Absolutely love it. My number one from 2020 is Lost Ruins of Arnak. All right, gang. Well, that is my top 10 favorite games from 2020. 2020 might have been a crappy year for all of us, but there were some great board games that came out. And if you didn't get a chance to play them, maybe you found some good ones here on the list that you might want to check out with your friends and family. Alrighty, until next time, have a good one, everybody.
Thanks so much, everybody. If you've enjoyed this video, please do us a giant favor by subscribing to the channel and clicking that wacky bell icon. If you're into board games, miniatures games, role-playing games, we have a bunch of audio podcasts you might enjoy. You can find those at thesecretcabal.com or on iTunes and Stitcher.